Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the darkest timeline. This week's episode, worrying about age. Is it better or worse than worrying about death? Find out. Cooking a big meal, doing a lot of baking, and anger management techniques. Do they work? We've got games, movies and TV this week, so there's that to look forward to. Before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, if you're feeling generous, feeling in a good mood, maybe click the old like button. Share the podcast around, that's obviously a big one. Subscribe if you haven't already. I think that. Oh, leave a review. If you're in a good mood, you could just be like, yeah, I'll give you a review. Go on. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast, the darkest timeline. Hello! How is it? How's it going? I decided to surprise myself by starting the recording. In an attempt to stop procrastinating. Another one of those where I was like, I'm absolutely going to do everything possible to make it so that I can start the podcast early. And that way I'm not going to be complaining for the rest of the evening about how I've lost my entire evening and gain a little bit of time back. And then I've spent, I would say conservatively, 45 minutes just pissing about. So I just pressed the button and now we're here. I am, as always, sat in the wrong position, so let's correct that. And, we could also deal with the 400,000 cables. Oh, my. There's a part of me that wants to say, I don't know why we need all these cables, but I know what all of these cables are for. So, silly to say things like that. Does anybody remember a little while ago? I'm by that I mean anybody that's listened to the podcast for more than 5 minutes. A while ago, I got super sort of obsessed with death. I think I talked about it for quite a while, and like it was a subject that was around for a while. And in hindsight, I think it's probably like clear signs of a midlife crisis kind of situation. I've since then I've heard that like in the area of sort of 40, 41, 42, you have this sort of mortality kind of issue. And like I say, in hindsight, looking back, I imagine that's where midlife crisis comes from. That's where a midlife crisis comes from. And it felt like it went on forever, and then it kind of just went away, not fully. It's still a thing that comes up every now and then, but it kind of dissipated. That's the word I was looking for. I was going to say dispersed, but I felt like no. Yeah. So the other day, I was going through some how do I word it? Financial type things. It's an awful time of year. But when I say that, I immediately go, but when is a good time of year? I have this run at the moment where I have a lot of stuff that I need to pay out for over the next 3 months, and I don't have enough money to do it. And the other thing is, the points in time that that I sort of get money, payday being one, a couple of other. I'm not trying to I don't want to start. It's not airing dirty laundry, but I don't want to be sort of going into too much. Other revenue streams, let's say, they all come at a point in time that it's kind of like it's too late. Now, certain people will say, well, if you know that, then you would budget for that. And largely, yes, but there is that whole sort of buffer type thing. You always should have a buffer. You always want to have a buffer. And if you go near that buffer or even into that buffer, it's always that feeling of, it's uncomfortable. So, I've got birthdays and birthday parties and that sort of stuff. And then like big ticket items, a lot of car related stuff. And then obviously you've got all the stuff that comes the back end of the year. So that's all going on at the moment. Another thing is that there's a series of like adjusted payments for things. Certain things go up at this time of year for X amount of time, and obviously you have that sort of adjustment period where you're like, okay, I need to pay this higher rate for the next 2-3 months or whatever. Then that drops down, but it's because it's gone up. When it drops down, you don't notice it as much, even though the amount is small, and you go through all of that. And it's just this sort of, I'm sure everybody has this constant, this money's coming here and that money's going out there, but that money that's going out there is too much, so that money that's coming in there at that time is this, and I might have to use that money for this so that I can recoup that money from there, and it's that. So one of the things is this increased payout. So it's like, I've got to pay more for this and that sort of thing. And then it's looking at how long that's going to be. So it's like, I'm going to be paying this, paying into this for X amount of time. I'm going to be paying into this for X amount of more time. When that changes, how much will the price difference be between that and that? And you look at what you're paying out, and it's like, well, that's going to go up, but that's going to go down. But all of these things have a time scale. So I was like, if you look at where you are now and you look at where you are in 3 years' time, what did your life look like? And I've never really, I don't think, I've never really done that. I've never really done that. Where will I be in 3 or 5 or 10 years? So I allowed myself the option, let's say, of doing that. So I was like, in 3 years, I'll be 47. So I have to caveat that straight away. In 3 years, I'll be 47 if I make it that far. And in 5 years, I'll be 49. But next year, in 3 years from next year, obviously 45 is kind of like, 45 is the last point, to me, 45 is the last point in time where you count birthdays yearly. After that, it's you don't count a birthday for 5 years, and then after that it's tens. And I think once you reach a certain point, you just give up counting birthdays. So I was like, 45, 3 years from 45, 48. 5 years from 45, 50. So I was like, I wonder what that will look like, when paying these things. Will I still be paying this at that point in time and this at this point in time? And, looking at the amount that's going in and the amount that's coming out at those points in time. It's like, cool beans. But then it makes you think. So, the one I was looking at, I was like, 48. And having that kind of, if I make it that far, kind of thing, then makes you think about other stuff. So then I was like thinking about my children. So I was like, where will my children be at that point in time? And I was like, well and truly into the sort of the teenage years. That'll be fun. Sort of bearing down on sort of a couple of teenagers, that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay. So then you start thinking about the other extreme. So it's like, okay, where will I be? Where will I be when my son is 18? So it's like, 60. And again, if I make it that far, and I was like, man, 60. I wonder what 60 will be like. Will I still be doing a podcast at 60? Will I still be chasing after the, can I sort my weight out by then? Will I still be working out at the amount I do? Will I still be running? Will I still, am I going to be climbing at 60 if I make it that far? And then I started having that same sort of feeling around the, the fear of death stuff. I was like, Then I started thinking, well, what if I don't make it that far? I'm talking about, once my son is 18, what if I don't make it that far? And then obviously I started getting quite sad, because I was like, well, what age will I be when I check out? What age will he be when I check out? Is he going to go through time of having to grow up without that parent? And obviously that all became very sad, very depressing, very not necessarily emotional, but it's not a great subject. I've got these two things. One, I know the rest of the story, and two, I imagine people are listening right now to this going, "Oh, this is fucking depressing, isn't it?" And yeah, it is. I just wonder if you do the same. So, a couple of days later, I had this exact conversation. With Leanne. And because I don't want to be too presumptuous, I had to keep saying, if I make it that far. But part of the reason I had to say that was because I'd say something. I'd say an age or like a life, a milestone. Let's say a keystone, a milestone. And she would just give me this look, and I'd go, "Well, obviously, if I make it that far." So I'm saying this. Obviously, if I make it that far, and then we then said something about My son turned at 18. And she was like, she just went, well, you won't. And there was just this silence, and I went, I won't be around at that time. And then again, there was this silence, and it was like, that's super, that's super depressing. Obviously, I'm laughing. It's that kind of gallows humour type thing. I'm laughing at the fact that not only do I think this, but Leanne thinks that I won't be around in 12 or plus years. 12. What am I on about? 12 years. More than 12 years away. So, yeah. And at the time, it made me laugh. It made me laugh, but I was like, but that's pretty depressing that every single person involved in this scenario is like, well, you won't be here at that time. So I'm like, well, what's that going to be like for him? At which point am I going to check out? And then he's going to have to grow up from that point without that parent. And you know, you do then start down that path of, oh shit, how do I prepare him? How do I prepare these children for that distinct possibility? Obviously, you've got the fact that it's nothing short of a miracle in some ways that I am here now. So amusing whilst being truly depressing. But yeah, you know, so it's good to laugh, even if it's at your own mortality. Cooked a big meal. I've never really, like, the closest I've come recently is there's these pizza things where you can make the recipe that I used and the videos that I've been using. You can make a pizza dough in half an hour. The point to that is that it's not really usable. It's not really serviceable. So you can sort of do it in an hour. And within an hour, that pizza dough is perfectly usable, perfectly serviceable. You can make a pizza with it. It just won't be the absolute best possible pizza dough it could be if it had longer. So there is a theory, I don't know how true this is, where a 72-hour pizza dough is the best possible version of a pizza dough you can get. And I'm pretty sure at this point in time, everybody's seen, and the only thing I ever think of is Domino's. Everybody's seen those big trays with like individual round dough balls. They all look exactly the same, and they all come in these really long trays. And the people in Domino's, other pizza places are all available, but this is the one that springs to mind for me. Mostly because there was a Domino's at the top of my street at one point, and in those days, it didn't cost you a full mortgage and a second mortgage to go and get a Domino's. So every now and then we used to go and watch. You could watch them prepare the pizza. So they'd bring out these big, like, deep box things. They'd pull out these individual doughs and then roll them and make your pizza. Those doughs have obviously come from, I imagine, some sort of factory. But that's kind of the idea. That your dough's supposed to go in an airtight container, go in the fridge, and you're supposed to leave it there for a few days. And then you get the best possible version. that is probably the closest I've come to making a meal that isn't, oh, I'm going to make a meal, here I go, and an hour later it's ready. You know, Christmas dinner, you can start you start sort of making that the night before. You do the veg and stuff. I've done that, been there. But I've never really done these long meals. So I've been planning this meal for like a week. Sent Leanne a video. I was like, look at this video. Look at this meal. It looks amazing. And it was like pork. And you do it so that you've got the crackling. And it was like funky mashed potato and like vegetables and all this like sort of stuff. There was like apple sauce or and it was like, okay. And I showed it to her. She was like, "Oh yeah, that's it, yeah." And in true Leanne fashion, yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely, yeah. Don't do any of the things in the video other than the pork. I was like, well, what? Not even the mash? No, I don't want the mash. Well, what about like the apple sauce? No, I'm not bothered about the apple sauce. Like, what about the vegetables? No, I don't want the vegetables. So you want the pork and that's it? Yeah, just the pork. Now, in her defence, that wasn't it. She just didn't want that meal. She wanted something similar but different. I was like, okay. But the pork side of this was like, you know, you got to start prepping this pork 24 hours before you need it. So I had to work back from the point in time that I was going to make the meal and go, okay, so I need to prep this on Friday because I'm making it Saturday. So that's what I did. I set a reminder, set a point in time, set an alarm, all of this, and then I'm like, right, okay, here I go. I'm off to go and prep my pork, and it was it was a really big job doing all this prep. And I did it, and there we go. It's done. It's ready. It's in the fridge, waiting for the next day. Or so I thought. So for the next 24 hours, I keep going back to the pork, and I'm like, this isn't right. It needs doing again. It needs more of the same prep. So I did more of the same. I put it back. A little while later, I looked at it again. I was like, it's still not right, and it needs more. So basically, this was me for a day and a bit, to be fair. And then it comes to cooking time, and I'm like, do you know something? I think I've completely misjudged all the timings for this meal. So I thought I was going to start making it at 4, but it was going to take me 2 hours, and I needed it ready for 7. So I'm like, well, that's not right. I need to make it at 5. There's only one problem. I need to walk the dog. So I'm like working it through, and I was like, okay, well, I can do this and I can do that. And I think the temperature is going to be different. And we had to get like a meat probe, the temperature thing. So I got one of those, and I was like, okay. So comes to the point in time, I get it in the oven. And I did these smashed potatoes, which I've done before, but this was a long time ago, and this was before the days of the air fryer. And a quick search of the internet / YouTube revealed that these things can be done super simple, super quick and super easy in your air fryer. So I'm all about that action. I've got my pork in the oven, smashed potatoes in the air fryer, green beans in the pan. I made it. I did it. I got the crackling. I got the potatoes smashed. I did it all, and oh dear. Can you imagine putting over 24 hours into something at the end to produce the end result and go, nah, I'm not happy with that. There was so much that went into this. There was so much involved in this. There was so much that needed doing that getting to the end and it not quite being right. And this is me being me. I'm a little bit too much of a perfectionist when it comes to this sort of stuff. So me being like, trying to cut it, and I kept saying that it looked dry, and Leon was like, well, it isn't, it's juicy. And I'm like, yeah, but it looks dry. And I was like, you should have had the apple sauce with it, and all of this. And it was this huge learning experience. I've never done anything like this before, and it sort of inspired me to look at doing these other things. And at the end of the process, the only thing I had to say about it was, I don't think I should have put salt on before I put it in the oven. That was it. That was my takeaway from the whole thing. Like, there we go. Lives and learns. This was Saturday, followed up yesterday with what has got to be possibly one of the biggest baking sessions of recent times, because so I swore to myself that I was going to take a little break yesterday. I said, I'm going to take half an hour out of the day. I'm going to do something for me. Because, and this is very hard to explain, so I'm probably not even going to try. But what I will just say is this: all this baking, cooking, all these things seem to be where my mental health is at the moment. The reason, like, if somebody asks me about it, my answer is, it keeps the demons at bay for now. That's my only answer. I don't know what it means. I do, and I know why, but for right now, this is where I am in life. I'm learning stuff. I'm trying to learn stuff. I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to perfect things. For what reason? I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to take half an hour. I'm going to play a new VR game that I've got, because honestly, it is fucking exhausting. So, I didn't do that, obviously. And instead, I didn't sit down yesterday. I got out of bed early to get showered and get the dog walked so that I could take my son to football. And when I stepped out of bed, when my feet touched the floor, I was on my feet from that point until I sat down at about 8 o'clock yesterday evening. So 12 hours on my feet. I was completely exhausted by it. I have destroyed my body. My body is in absolute bits. I keep telling everybody that I think I need a holiday, a break of some description, knowing full well that that's not an option in my life. So now I'm like, how is this a better solution to everything? Did this huge baking session, had all of these baked goods at the end of it, and then went, well, now what? Now what do I do with all this? Now I've been palming it off on people left, right, and centre. One of the things I had to get in yesterday was, speaking of pizza doughs and pizzas, I needed to make pizza dough, pizza sauce, pizza. Reason being, on Saturday, me and my youngest daughter sat for like 2 minutes, and I was like, hey, look at this video, look at this person, they're making an insane pizza, mental. And they were doing like a stuffed crust pizza, but they were putting all sorts in the crust, and then like the pizza itself. And she's like, "Oh my god, look at that!" And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing, isn't it?" And I think I said something silly like, "Do you like pizza?" I mean, really? She was like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "Daddy, will you make me a pizza?" And again, I know this will probably sound weird, probably sound strange, probably sound whatever. At that moment in time, I wished I'd had the ability to be able to say, absolutely, I'll go into the kitchen, I'll get the dough out, I'll knock up whatever I need to knock up, and I'll do your pizza for tea. But I didn't have the time to be able to do that. Like, even just sort of like the rest time alone, I think she was like half an hour away from tea time, and it would have taken a minimum of an hour. And I was like, "Oh, I will make you a pizza, but it won't be today." So I made sure that I was gonna do it so that she could have it for tea yesterday. But it was the fact that she said to me, "Daddy, will you make me a pizza?" Now, obviously, one of those things, she's had a multitude of homemade pizzas in the last few weeks. The other thing being is that she's taken great pleasure in telling anybody who'll listen the story of me dropping the entire pizza on the floor. But I was like, "Oh, wow." She's like, "Oh, can you make me a pizza?" And my answer was, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll do it for you for tea tomorrow." And it filled my tiny little black heart with a small amount of joy. Because, it was like, that's how she looked at me. She looked at this video, she's gone, "That pizza looks amazing." But, like, my dad can make that for me. So yeah, warmed my little heart, that did. Last week I was talking about anger management. I've had two interesting things in the last day or so. One, I was talking about an anger management technique that I was sort of aware of, but I didn't have a use for. Turns out I did have a use for it, and it's for driving. So now, when I get in the car, I sit in the seat, and I do a big deep breath, and then I do another big deep breath, and then I smile, a big juicy smile, and I set out and do my driving. And today I drove home And I wanted to tell everybody in the house that I hadn't said anything. The entire way home, I didn't make any comment on anybody else's driving or any driving situations at all. I just drove home with my big stupid grin on my face. Yesterday, this was one of those where I was a bit like, I think that's gone really well. I surprised myself, I think was the thing. I surprised myself. So, cupboard in the kitchen has got a variety of different things. Tins, spices, salt, oil, pasta, those sorts of things. In there, we have sea salt in the grinder and the old crack black pep, as it's known, in, again, the grinder. If you open the cupboard door, the salt will fall out 100% of the time. It's one of those things in life that it just is the way it is. And that's the way it is. If you open that cupboard, that salt is going to fall out. So, very, very, very back end of cooking, the baking, everything. I was just finishing up something and I opened the cupboard and the salt fell. And it was almost one of those, I knew it was going to happen. So because I knew it was going to happen, I was prepared for it. And I caught the salt, but it had started like this domino chain reaction. And I managed to catch or secure or stabilize or any of those things every single item that was falling. And it was like 10 things. And I've only got 2 hands and I managed to do it with 2 hands. But there was one item that I didn't manage to secure. That item fell out of the cupboard and landed in a jug of coffee. And the coffee that was in the jug of coffee went absolutely everywhere. That's right, yes. So it's coffee up the inside of the cupboard, coffee up the outside of the cupboard, coffee all over the side, all over the floor, all over the coffee machine. It's basically everywhere. Now, usually, this would be a point in time for me to fire off about 300 swear words in about 0.8 of a second and give some sort of running commentary about how terrible or awful or unfair my life is. Without even batting an eyelid, without even blinking, without even whispering a curse word. I turned around, picked up the cloth from the sink and just went about cleaning it up. Never mentioned it, never said a word, just cleaned it up and moved on with my life. It was only part way through the cleaning up process, and wiping the side down and wiping the coffee machine down, getting all the coffee mopped up, all this, that I went, I didn't lose my temper then at all. Not once. Not a single, didn't even bat an eyelid as far as my temper was concerned. So, yeah. That's kind of the week. Sometimes when you write a list for a podcast, you think, hey, this stuff's great. It's great, amazing content. And then you go through and you go, I'm not sure how great that content was. No relevance to this podcast, obviously. Where's my drink? I've got a drink that isn't mixed, and it's annoying. So, excuse me while there we go. Now we're talking. Come on. Delicious. So, entertainment-wise, let's talk some entertainment stuff. A couple of bits and bobs here and there. I didn't write it down, did I? I have watched 4 and a bit, but we'll just talk about the 4. 4 episodes of Series 2 of Hit Monkey. Hit Monkey is through the Stars brand through Disney. So it's basically a way that Disney can do sort of I don't know, stuff that Disney wouldn't normally do. A little bit gory, a little bit graphic, higher rating kind of stuff. It's animated, and it's about a monkey assassin and his ghost friend. Yes, I know. Series 1 was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed Series 1. I went through it on the podcast. Felt it was very much... I don't know. It was like a... I don't know what score I would have given it. 7, 8 out of 10 and stuff. Enjoyable watch. Interesting concept. Gory, etc. Series 2 has come along, and if I'm honest, I'd heard not amazing reviews. That in itself, not a great start. But I'm not a man to let a review dissuade me, unless, it's really bad. So I was like, okay, I'm probably still going to give it a whirl, at least. 4 episodes in as of this evening, and there are a couple of elements of the story. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but how do I put it without ruining anything? They've added an element. They've added a few elements. They've added a multitude of additional characters. They've added, like Bryce, who's the ghost, and Monkey, are now a 3-person team. There is a lady, and then they've added all these other characters, which is fine. It's Series 2. You got to help the story move along. All this side of it. They've recently, last couple of episodes, added an element where, like I said, I don't want to ruin anything, but on one hand, I feel it's a cop-out from the story that they were doing originally. I feel it's a bit of a cheat. They've put on a cheat. On the other hand, the mechanic they have used for this cheat seems a bit dumb. So the principle is, I'm going to give you 48 hours. You can use that 48 hours how you see fit. So it doesn't have to be 48 hours consecutively. It can be 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there for 48 hours. If that was me, if you gave me 48 hours to use, let's say you gave me 48 hours to use a superpower, I would use that as sparingly as possible and try and just go about my life normally the rest of the time, and then go, I can use a little bit of the 48-hour superpower to do this one thing, turn it on, do the one thing, turn it off. I use like 5 seconds. At the most, I give 5 or 10 minutes. The rest of the time, I'm not using my superpower, and away we go. So, this has become a weird plot hole. I get why they're doing it. I understand it. I really do. What I have issue with is this wasteful nature they've sort of gone with. Everything outside of that has been fine. They've got these sort of like... They've got like the main story, then they've got these additional characters that have come along which have brought their own story, and then there's this other character who was a character from the first series, and they're doing this, their story is important, they're just not really in it all that much. Okay, well that story isn't that important then, is it? But hey, it's been good, I've enjoyed it. I don't know if the review I saw is reflecting of some of these sorts of, I don't know what I'd call them, criticisms that I've just mentioned. I don't know. I can't remember what the actual review was. I just know it was, I think it's second series syndrome. So, yeah. Not entirely sure how many episodes there are in this series. Can I find out while I'm sitting here talking to you guys for, that great podcast content? Let me look. Right, okay. Here we go. Whoa. Hitman on Disney Plus. Why? Yeah, I had a feeling that it was... Okay, so there's 10 episodes, and I am on episode 5, and I'm only halfway through it, which is why we're not talking about episode 5. There, see? It all worked out in the end. Hitman is. Both Hitman movies are on Disney Plus. That's disappointing. Probably going to go and watch both of those films. That's probably more disappointing. We'll see. Like I say, with 5.5 episodes left, I do wonder where it's going to go. One of the story elements is kind of nearly wrapped up. So, I think there might be a secret bad guy. I think that might be a thing. I think there might be a secret bad guy, but we'll see. I watched a movie, as I sometimes do. It was a movie that I really wanted to see. So much so that I nearly went to the cinema to see it. As a rule, general rule, I don't go to the cinema. My cinema viewing these days is that's a children's film that my children want to see, and it's not a Disney movie because Disney just goes to Disney Plus. And I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine. Outside of that, I don't really go to the cinema as a rule, and I just wait for stuff. In hindsight, kind of glad because this film did go on to Prime for free. So I was like, well, there we go. That's that problem solved. The film is Dumb Money. I was very interested in this. Had a good cast. And I was interested in the story. Now then. Something I will say is this. I do not understand the financial side of things. Sorry, I should probably explain what the film is if you don't know. Dumb Money is centered around the sort of scandal of the GameStop share scandal. So, from what I understand, and please believe me, if any of this is wrong, this is just my understanding, and I am dumb as a box of frogs. So, my understanding is a series of hedge fund managers, that's where the first hurdle is. I don't really know what that is, were in the process of shorting GameStop. GameStop is a company in America, or was a company in America, that was basically like our version of Game, as far as I could tell, or like CEX or somebody like that. They're a games company. Simple. A guy who had some financial background, I think he worked for a finance company called, on the internet was called Roaring Kitty, was basically just like, look, if we all get together and buy stock in GameStop, the stock price will go up, we'll make some money, but we'll also screw over all these hedge funds and hedge fund managers. So it's the little guy taking on the big guy. That's my understanding. If you would like me to explain to you the ins and outs of the way that financial market works, no, absolutely no chance. The cast was people like Paul Dini, of Joker. No, absolutely not. Of Riddler, Jesus Christ. Fame, and was also in, more recently was in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I watched. Pete Davidson, probably needs no introduction on that one. The Seth Rogen, who, you know, generally in pretty much everything. And what's that guy's name? I think he was in Parks and Recreation, I think. And I think he's also been in The Last of Us, and his name escapes me. Neither of those shows I have seen. I want to call him Ron Burgundy, but that's that terrible fucking character from Anchorman. It's gonna... I am fully aware that somebody right now is screaming at their listening device about this person's name. Don't get old people, it's trap. Oh look, there's a film that nobody's going to care about. What am I? Dumb Money. Oh Jesus, I got the first name wrong. Paul Dano? I didn't think that was his name. Paul Dano. Oh Jesus Christ, I've freaking forgotten one as well. Vincent D'Stefano. I mean that. Am I genuinely having a stroke right now? Because none of those names look right to me. D'Onofrio. That's not how I thought that name went. Sebastian Stan. Clancy Brown's in it briefly. Where's that fucking name gone? Nick Offerman. Ron Swanson was the guy who played in Parks and Rec. There's another guy who I feel like I should know. I have a weird feeling that he has been in... Yeah. He has been in the Transformers film that I haven't seen. Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Apparently he's been in loads of stuff. Well, not, but Star is Born? Hamilton, In the Heights. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about Dumb Money. I've gone away from Dumb Money. Can I give you... is there a blurb? Oh, here we go. IMDb says, David versus Goliath tale about everyday people who flipped the script on Wall Street and got rich by turning GameStop. the video game store, into the world's hottest company? Again, no. Because the thing about it was that they didn't make GameStop popular for the thing the company was supposed to be popular for, which was selling games. It's another one of those. It's like, oh yeah, we made this company popular by jacking the stock price. Yeah? How about you sell a copy of freaking Mario Kart at a reasonable price? Anyway. I genuinely wanted to see this film and almost went to see it at the cinema. So, glad to be able to watch it at home for no money. I know what you're thinking. Why don't you just get to the goddamn review? Well, banger of a cast, I think you'll agree. A load of names I can't pronounce. Honestly, I'm surprised about some of those names. Probably got other names wrong as well. Is Seth Rogen really called Seth Rogen? Who can say? So, it was very good. I didn't, as we can tell at this point in time, I didn't 100% follow the story. In the sense of, I don't know the ins and outs and the ups and downs. I followed along with the little people were investing money into these stocks, which was jacking the price up, which somehow, I think it was this thing that the people that are shorting it are betting on it to fail. So they buy shorts. Now, from what I remember, in the Big Short, that was the principle. They were betting on the house, on the property market collapsing. And it did, and they made billions. Anything like this, and this is kind of what the film portrays, certainly towards the back end. Anything like this, it's all black magic. It's all just nonsense. It's just a load of rich people making more and more money and a load of poor people who don't stand a chance. From what I can work out, you've got £10 or $10, you can probably lose it on the stock market. If you've got 10 billion, you'll probably make another 10 billion in the next day. That's basically it. The whole thing went through all these ups and downs where they were they were driving the share price up for this company. There was a distinct point in time where they were basically they were stopped from being able to trade, which I'm pretty sure put a particular company out of business. A company that was highlighted heavily that nobody really understood how this company was making money. And they kept asking them, how is it that you're making money? And even the guys who owned the company couldn't answer that question straight. It was almost like they didn't know. So that in itself was interesting. It's one of those films that, because it's based on a true story, it's sort of like interspersed with like real news footage and stuff from the time. Some of the stuff is where they've just replaced the person with the actor kind of situation. And other points in time, certainly towards the back end, it's the real film footage. Ultimately, it reached a point where the company did go out of business, and a lot of people made a lot of money, and a lot of very, very rich people lost a lot of money. Yay for the little guy. It did involve like quite a big lawsuit. The Roaring Kitty guy had to go before like federal court, but so did a load of these hedge fund guys. I will say this. Towards the very back end of that film, it made me a little emotional. A lot of this kind of the little guy just can't win. It's just not possible. The little guy will always be kept down, while these like 1%ers are always gonna do well. No matter what, they physically can't fail, and they're not allowed to fail. And then you get sort of all the blurby bit at the end, where the film finishes, but you get a load of writing, and it says like Roaring Kitty made $17 million, and then disappeared off the face of the earth. Just basically went into hiding. And then it talks about like the companies that went out of business. But then it talked about the lawsuit, this federal court case, where they were investigating all of this sort of corruption, all these hedge funds, all these hedge fund managers that were all just having a whale of a time, scratching each other's back, bailing each other out to the tune of billions of dollars. And at the end of it all, they went, yeah, we can't see anything wrong in this. And that was the end of it. Case closed. And it's kind of that thing that there is no way that you can look at that and go, well, that's completely legit. You can tell that they absolutely did their job. All that says is, so you were paid off then, yeah? Very, 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 very wealthy people went, I'm sure we can come to some sort of agreement. Because that's what they were doing throughout the entire film. There's a point where a guy's like, oh, I've lost $2 billion in the last 2 days. Can you help out? And they're like, sure, I'll give you $1 billion. $1 billion. $1 billion. There you go. Like somebody said, can you lend me a $5? Great film. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely no fat on the bone there. It was an absolute banger of a movie. Thoroughly enjoyable. If you have, I often say at these times, if you have Prime, definitely worth checking out, especially, it's free. It's definitely one that's worth paying for if you don't have that option. So if you can get it for a few quid, I'd say give it a go. Computer game wise, a little bit quiet on the computer game front. I've been replaying an old game, so that kind of gets taken out of the equation immediately. And like Steam Deck wise, I've just been playing the Lego driving game just for bits and pieces to do here and there. So let's talk about some VR stuff. I don't know where I was up to with, I think the last time we sort of spoke, I mentioned that I'd finished the back end of Into the Radius 2's beta, but it was only because I started with the last level to do when I switched over to the beta version. I had already set up a brand new playthrough so that I could really absorb this beta version. It has had an update already. The beta version's already had an update, which was interesting. Mostly bug fixes, but a couple of changes and additions and things. It looks great. It plays reasonably well. I was playing it last night, and there was a lot of enemies dropping out of the sky. Seemed to be last night's theme. And at the most difficult point I've had in the game in a long time, I sort of managed to move to get a better angle of the area where this shit load of enemies were. And I think I must have moved out of the area, which I think did some sort of weird reset to the area, and all of the enemies disappeared. And I was a bit like, I mean, yay, don't have to deal with them anymore, but it felt like cheating, which was a bit weird. And I was a bit like, if I return to this area, are all the enemies just going to randomly reappear out of nowhere? Because that's going to be loads of fun to deal with. That didn't happen. So it's been great. It's been a real enjoyment. A couple of things that I do really wish is that you could get the later guns, the later upgrades and things sooner, because at the point in time that you get those guns and upgrades and everything that comes with sort of level 3, the game, it's at the what's being referred to as the soft end. So you just don't get the opportunity to use those items. And we're being told that we're going to get no new areas for this game this year, although they are expecting a couple of reasonable updates. I think this beta version is probably one of them. So I think we're only due one other update this year. It's just one of those. It's just making for difficult playing. But super enjoyable. It looks amazing with all these new additions. This beta version is chef's kiss. Absolute chef's kiss. It's beautiful. I just wish there was just more. I'd just like there to be more. But I suppose that's just greed, isn't it? Funny story. I'm on the old YouTubes the other evening waiting for a podcast to code. That's actually a dirty, stinking, filthy lie. That wasn't the situation. The situation was, I was watching. Oh dear, I was watching a cooking video, which I'm sure you can imagine isn't at all like me. When the video finished, it went on to another video, and it was a VR game, and I was like, "What is this game? This game looks awesome." And it was like a guy doing like a clearing of a building. Building had been taken over by bad guys, and you were like going room to room clearing the building. But it had all these interesting mechanics. Blow open the door with a shotgun if the door's locked, and putting civilians on the ground and sort of like handcuffing them. And I was like, I've never seen mechanics like that in a VR game or in any sort of game I can think of off the top of my head. I do have Ready or Not, but I physically can't play that game. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, what is this game? It's a game called Split Second. Works on the principle of basically what I said. You are presumably a police officer who goes into a variety of buildings and does sort of room by room clearance, either taking out bad guys that shoot at you, or securing civilians, or there's the third option, somebody who makes themselves look like a civilian who ultimately reveals themselves to be a bad guy. What was interesting was I was like, I've got a demo of that game. Check my library. Absolutely. Got a demo. Never played it. It's like, right, well, let's play the demo and see what the crack is. Played the demo and a couple of things. One, it's early access. But early access meta, like the quest, it's called App Lab. Rather than when you do it through Steam, when it is just early access. So I'm like, cool. Secondly, because it's App Lab, early access, The full game was like £4.50. I'm like, okay. So, I'm like, right, here's the way to decide if this is going to be any good at all. Play the demo. Put the demo on the other day. Had a quick blast, and I was like, this game it's rough around the edges, absolutely. But it's a lot of fun. Loads of fun. Super enjoyable. Played the only level that the demo had. Played it a couple of times. I'm like, this is a blast. It was different. Each time I played it, same level, different scenarios. I'm like, yeah, I'm prepared to give you £4.50 for this. Working on the principle that once it gets a full release, it'll be a 20 quid game. I'm like, I'll give you £4.50 now for it. No problems. Another one of those situations when I start playing it, it's like, hey, I'm an individual single developer. I was like, come on, bro. This game's way too good to be done by one person. Bought the game, installed the game, and gave it a go. And the game, full game version, is actually different to the demo. You have more weapons and things. And it looks a little bit different and plays a little bit different. But I did a couple of levels on it last night whilst my internet was down for the bajillionth time. And I'm like, this game is great. This is what... I'd seen a comment on a video at somebody that was saying, like, this is what VR should be all about. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Make it fun. Give us new and sort of inventive mechanics. There's a few, like I say, it's rough around the edges. There's things like grabbing some of the guns isn't as easy as you'd like it. You can't do it sort of fast because you've got to be quite methodical about grabbing the right bit of the gun. Ammo is an issue. I can't work out how to turn the light on the pistol. Stuff like that. But I'm like, if I give you £4.50 now and you take this game to full release, not like that, then are we going to get like a super polished version of this game that ultimately I'll have paid a pittance for? I'm just like, you cannot argue with this. So, yeah, that's been super enjoyable. So, yeah, I got into a bit of a debate today about VR with somebody who plays VR but doesn't really put a lot of stock into it, and somebody who can't get on with VR. So as far as they're concerned, VR is dead. And I'm like, VR is absolutely the most innovative thing in gaming at the moment. You just don't see it. Somebody had to be right. Somebody had to be wrong. Who knows? Not I. That is the podcast right there. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. So there we go. What do you think of that? Another one done, another one gone. Big thank you for watching. Big thank you for listening. Big thank you for being here. Before you go, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button, and that way you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of CookieCast.